Gemara. Today's daf is daf Dalar and Aleph. This is the Monday's Gemara, Beis El. Boy, Papa asked a question. What about we're asking a number of questions about the daughter, whether she's entitled to mezainis in circumstances where the mother did something that she has foregone her entitlements. The daughter of a woman that was raped. Yes, la mezainis. Is she entitled to mezainis? And we're talking about a daughter of someone that was raped, and then afterwards you married her, because the Torah says if you rape somebody, you have to marry. Like Elisha, you have to marry her if she agrees. And then you had a daughter, and then he died. Question is she entitled to the state to get mezainis or not? What's the question? Now, we had a big argument before. Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda holds that the mother is still entitled to a ksuva, even though the Torah forced them to get married. The mother is entitled to a ksuva, and but the Rabbanan say the 50 shkolim that he pays as knas, that is a substitute for the ksuva. There's no ksuva involved at all. So at least the $200. So the question is, what about these entitlements that the daughter should be taking care of mezainis? So leave Rabbi Yehuda, who says that there is a ksuva like the Bailach Shula. There is a valid ksuva, money of $100, not 200 but 100 because she's no longer a psula. So therefore the daughter gets mezainis. Key to Bailach, our question is leave it abana. They say you have to catch a knosov ksuvasa. She gets paid out, but she got the 50 shkolim. That's a substitute for the ksuva. That's as far as a $200 is concerned. What about the mezainis, the other conditions that are tagged in the mezuzah? In the ksuba, what do we say? Even the less ksuba, since there is no ksuba, less mezainis. The fact is no ksuba is therefore that other condition is not there. Ideal ksuba. What's the whole idea of ksuba? Time, what's the reason ksuba is? We don't want you every time you get angry to throw your wife out of the house. They should take kalabeno. Let's say it should be easy to evict her. The whole the Torah doesn't allow you. The Torah already put safeguards in place. You have to keep her as a wife forever, so she doesn't need a ksuba. And therefore, it's as if all the other parts of ksuba still remain intact. And what do you call it? And therefore, she's entitled to mezainis. All the other conditions of ksuba may remain intact. And therefore, it's not like she's no ksuba at all. We don't need a ksuba in this case. We don't need the $200 because anyway, you're not going to evict her because you're not allowed to. But all the other conditions maybe are still there. Take who remain with the question. Next one. It says further, okay, now we continue talking about the rights of a woman after her husband dies. He writes in the ksuba, and if he doesn't write it still there, that you can sit in my house and continue as long as you're living as an almana. So Rabbi Yossi said, the base in my house, the labor, because if you live in a little hut, a little tiny, hovel, then it's not very comfortable at all. Then she doesn't stay there because he said clearly, the base in my home. So that part, living in the house, no. But at least, even though she goes back to her family, she's still entitled to be provided for from the state, food-wise. But Abashi says no. Once you cannot live in the house, it's sort of two conditions intermingled. They depend on each other. After the Mazoy, they can't live in the house. There's no food. Says the Gemara, but less hilchos Abashi. We don't follow Abashi. You can't live in the house, and she has to go back home. She's still entitled to have her food. So what happens? The reason why she continues eating from the state is because she still loves her husband. But the moment she gets married to somebody else, that means she's just sort of left her husband. She's no longer entitled. What about she's looking to get married? That means that she's no longer doing it for the covet of her husband. She's not still, madly loving her husband, can't marry anybody else. She's looking for marriage. The only reason why she didn't get married is because she didn't find the right person. Does that therefore mean that she severs her ties with her husband's estate? So what happens? This is what I'm going to talk about. In different levels, different degrees. Tavu Alina, say people are starting to come to her in proposals, and Venispaisa. And she agreed to marry somebody, but she didn't do anything yet. She just agreed. Ein la mezainis. She no longer has any more food. Says the Gemara, "Holla in this spice." What do you tell me? Whatever, say she didn't like this particular person. The idea is all right, but she didn't like this particular person. Are you telling me yesh la mezainis? She's still entitled to food, but she just demonstrated that she's ready to leave. Just because she didn't leave, not because she's not ready to leave. It's only because she didn't find the right person. Nothing to do with the covet of her husband. I heard from Shmuel, if she said, look, sorry, I'm not interested because I still love my first husband, then yesh la mezainis. She's still thinking about her husband, then this is a covet of the husband to continue providing for her. She said, look, I don't think the people are suitable for me. That means she's no longer doing it because of the covet of her husband. She's ready to leave. Then ein la mezainis. Then why should the state continue providing for her? Said, what happens if zinsa? What happens if she was a mezana while she was living as a widow? Is that saying that she no longer is interested in her husband? So she, according to Chizah, yes, she's forsaken her, or no longer any more rights to be provided for. Rabbi Yosef said, Kichla. if she went ahead and she painted herself, in other words, she's trying to look very fashionable so that people should be attracted to her. Upirchase, and pirchase can either mean parting her hair, or pirchase can mean also kind of painting, or she's braiding her hair. Again, she's demonstrating to us that she's looking, then she loses mezainis. She's not thinking about the cover of her husband. Manda Amazin, the one who said that she was Mazana, that if she's Mazana, she's no longer thinking of the cause of her husband. Surely, in the case where she's going out of her way, and it's not just a one-off event, she's going out of her way looking, then surely she left her husband, therefore she loses her Mazaitis. But Manda Mekichla Pichasa, when she's constantly doing Abazinsa Isla, but if she was a Mazana, which is like a one-off thing, she's still entitled to her Mazaitis. Why? My time, answer. It's not her fault. She's lonely, and therefore she doesn't think about her husband anymore. Now the Gemara concludes after all of these questions we had, all these we had in the last pages. But less halacha is not like any of these dinim we just learned. Ella the following: Hatevas, or actually we're learning right now what you just said. Hatevas ksuvasi. If somebody, let's say, demands a ksuva, the bezin, if she goes ahead, the almana, and she says to the bezin, I want to get fully paid out, then ain't mezainis. That's the only time she loses mezainis. If she paints herself, mezana, all that, she doesn't lose mezainis. It's only if she goes to bezin and demands it, not that she shows and so on. The law says he wanted to know. But Tanya, we learned, machra ksuvas, if she sold a ksuva, mashkin ksuvas, so she used a ksuva as a collateral, or asik ksuvas, apoitik lachar, she owes money to somebody and she used it as a lien. She said, look, poitik it means apoit heikoi. You will collect from here. If I don't have money, you'll collect from here your debt. Ein la mezainis. She loses her mezainis because she already is as if she's using the ksuva. She's using the ksuva already. It seems from here, hani in. It's as if she already collected her ksuva because she used it for collateral. She gave it away. It's as if she collected her ksuva. So all the rights and entitlements that are tagging the ksuva, she forfeits. Aval tevas like, but it seems clearly for here that if she goes to a bezin and demands a ksuva, but she didn't get it yet, she doesn't forfeit. It's only when she actually used the ksuva. Says you want to know. Hani, these three cases, I don't care if she did it in front of a court, didn't in front of a court, she sort of used the ksuva already, so she forfeits all the rights, entitlements. But tevas, if she's just asking for it, then it depends where. Big bezin, if she went to a court of law and says, I want to collect my full ksuva, then she forfeits all her entitlements. She'll leave a bezin, but not in the bezin law, she doesn't. The people Yishalayim had two different customs. Whether it's up to her when she goes to ksuva, that's when she forfeits the mezainis, or it's up to the children to decide when. When we learned, Rav said the halacha like Anshe Yehuda say that's up to the children. They decide to pay her out on bulk sum, and then they no longer have to pay her mezainis. Shmuel says halacha ka Anshe Galil, and Shmuel says the halacha is like Anshe Galil. It's up to her when she wants to terminate that relationship and collect her entire ksuva. So Gemara says, Bavel, v'chol parvadra, Bavel, there's a city called Bavel, there's a country called Bavel. Maybe this is a city. So Bavel and all of its neighborhoods surrounding it, Noah Karab, they follow Rab because he's the rabbi. Neherdoy v'chol parvadra, but Neherdoy and all its surrounding neighborhoods, Noah Kishmul, they follow Shmuel. Because he was the rabbi there, so they follow Shmuel, that it's up to her when she ends that relationship. There was a girl from Mechuzah that having a sibul. She was married to a guy from the Doi. So she came from Mechuzah, which is Rav's territory, and she was married to the Doi, which is Shmuel's territory. Also, she wanted to know when she's still tired of Zayn. You can tell from the accent that she's in Bas Mechuzah. I guess the accent is slightly different. He said to her, look, they'll follow Rav, which means it's up to the children. They decide to terminate, that's it. They pay you out, and they don't have to feed you anymore. They said to Nachman, well, in the Doi, she married somebody from the Doi. So Nachman said, then the Doi Shmuel, follow your husband like Shmuel. And the Ritva says over here, interesting, in some other shining, that since the woman moves to the area where the husband lives, she accepts all the minhagim of the husband. Sounds like if the husband moved to the area where the woman lives, then you follow the minhagim of the woman. This is the question of a Sephardi marrying Ashkenazi, and Ashkenazi marrying a Sephardi. So some want to say you always follow the husband, but from the Ritva and others want to rely on that and say it depends who moved to which area. If she moved to his area, she follows whatever his minhagim are, and if he moved to her area, then he follows whatever minhagim she has. Interesting. What's the how far does the Doi extend? The different measurements. Those places that still follow the measurement of the Doi, then they consider it as ancillary to her Doi. Itma we learned almana, a widow. Rav says when you pay her out to ksuba, remember Rav says shomim mashallah that you deduct the cost of all the clothing that she wears. Let's say it's at $200 or $50 worth of clothing. You deduct all that. When the bezin goes on her behalf and collects a ksuba, they deduct all the clothes that she had because she's taking it with her, and they'll say that forms part of your payment. Shmuel says, "Ain't shom mashallah." The clothes that she's wearing, that's not part of the payment at all. He wants her to have it, and he wants her to have it. When it comes to a worker, not a daily worker, but a worker that you only make up at the end how much you're going to pay him. Meanwhile, you're giving him clothing, and then when it comes to payment, you can count the clothing that you gave him as part of the payment. So it says, and there they hold exactly the opposite. Whatever they hold by almana, they hold exactly the opposite. By almana, maybe you do want to give her clothing because it's your wife, and there's absolutely no obligation whatsoever to give any clothes to your worker. Rav Kahane Master the same argument they have by an almana where the clothing is deducted or not, and Rav deducts the clothing. Shmuel doesn't. The same argument is by this worker. Well, Mana Basimlan, he makes a simon to remember Yasma, the case of a Yisema here, this worker is called a Yasma, and our Mauta and the case of the widow are both the Shalach send them out, upuk and deduct or take away the clothing from them. Amar Nachman said, even though we learned in the Mishnah, just like Shmuel, that the clothing is not included, is not deducted, but nevertheless, we're going to follow that. What's the story? That now we learn, and these are the rules of bankruptcy. If somebody, let's say, donates all of his estate to a hektish, or he said, my value goes to hektish, and then he can't pay, label to him, then you have to go and the receivers come in and take away whatever they can. Certain things you leave behind. And one of them is, we learn you don't take the clothes of your wife, because those belong to her. The clothes of the son of a bankruptcy. You cannot go to the wife's clothes or children's clothing, because that belongs to them. And not any clothes that you specifically made for your wife and for the children, even though they didn't wear it yet, but you made it for them, certain colors they like. So what does he clothe them? The clothing is not considered belonging to the husband, and therefore the receivers can't collect it. So same here, we do not deduct from the ksuba the clothes. Brand new shoes, if you bought it specifically for them, even though they never wore it. The Mishnah clearly supports Shmuel that clothing are not part of the deal. So since the Mishnah is exactly Shmuel, so why are you ruling like that? That the clothes are deducted from the ksuba. So he said the very interesting. If you read it, the Mishnah prima facie is Kishmuel Hita. If you read it Mishnah superficially, it comes like the Shmuel. If you start analyzing it, you'll see Hilchas HaKavas Rav. You'll see clearly that the halacha is like Rav, and that is over there, they're still living together, husband and wife, and he wanted to have these clothes, and he gave it to Lechatchila in order to have these clothes, as long as they're living together. My time of wife, when he gave the clothes to his wife while they lived together, the only problem is that he lost his money. I died to make him kamei in order to continue living together. In our case here, the husband died, and the woman wants to take the clothes away from the family, away from the house. That he never intended to. So therefore, you want to take it away? Deduct that from the ksuba. Says about a Kausa, the daughter-in-law of Bala Yosef. We had Bala Yosef. He was in Sechta Tainus. He was the son-in-law of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. And actually, maybe not. Maybe it's somebody else. The daughter-in-law of Bala Yosef had the Katovik Ksuvasa Miyaslim. She was asking her ksuba from the orphans. She wanted the ksuba. How the Kamamtul Medina. She took them to a court, to a Jewish court. Amri, they were very smart. They knew the halacha like Rav, that all the clothing is deducted. They didn't know how many clothes she had. So they said to her, this is the rules of the scheme. They said, we're going to court. You got to dress up like a mensch. You can't walk with your simple clothes. Bring all your Shabbos clothes, your Yom Tov clothes, dress like a mensch. She brought money. She wore all the clothing and dressed up really, really fancy. And also coming to Ravina, Ravina rules, hey, that all the clothes you have, we have to deduct from the ksuba. So therefore, because now we see all these expensive clothing, we'll deduct that from the ksuba. Maybe we couldn't have a subpoena, but this way they convinced her to bring it all to court, and without realizing what she was doing, she basically harmed herself. Person says that the I want that the dowry should be so much clothes for my daughter and so on. So many clothes. Zal Nadaina, what happens if the clothes went down in price? He didn't really want the money, he wanted the clothes. Let's say he set aside $400 to buy all of these clothes, and he tabulated which clothes it is. Turned out to be by the time that they were going to buy it, it went down to $200, all the massive sales. So who gets the benefit of the extra 200? They buy her $400 worth of clothes, which is double the amount. He said no. He wanted clothes. He just mentioned he nominated a value because that's what it's worth at that time. But what he wanted, the focus was clothing. So they bought all the clothing, and then he leftover money belongs to the sending. But the converse is also true. That if, let's say, it costs more, let's say clothes price went up, they take it out of the state. They have to give her exactly that amount of clothing. A person said, $400 for wine to my daughter. So really, in this case, it's not like he wants to give her $400, and the wine is like a guarantee we'll give it. So it's not giving $400 worth of wine; it's giving $400, and it happens to be wine. If what happens, the wine became more expensive. So there was wine in the house, and the wine became more expensive. So $400 of wine now is half the amount that he wanted to give. Since the main focus of $400, they just give her half the wine because it's the $400. Oh, but the profit goes to the orphans. Another story of Rabbi Yochanan. The relative Rabbi Yochanan again. The relative Rabbi Yochanan had that the father was married to another woman. Last time we learned that she was constantly sick, and they were thinking of ways of how to somehow or another put a cap on how much they pay, and he gave them advice, and he regretted it. Over here, they were losing out. They had to continue to pay. She ate a lot. She had a big appetite. Maybe it's a different woman. Also, because the other woman was very sick. You don't think he has a big appetite. Also, advice. Amelie said, Izilu, go, tell your father, because they saw it coming, that you don't have to provide for her, it'll be very expensive. Tell your father to set aside a property, say to this woman that your sustenance will come from this property. Therefore, you're limiting it to that property, and then if she runs out, it runs out. Also, the Kamesh Laki, they went before the Shlaki. I guess she took the Torah before the Shlaki to brother of Rabbi Yochanan. Amalu, he said that made worse. By setting aside property, what you're really saying is you continue providing, you run out of money, that property you cannot touch. That's hers. So on the contrary, that's to benefit her, not to limit her. Rabbi Yochanan gave us advice, told us on the contrary, that's only limited to that field. He said, Zilu Havla, go ahead and listen to my advice and go give her whatever she wants, because we like not. Pull Rabbi Yochanan out of the ears. In other words, I'm the Rav here, you listen to me. He spoke with real authority. Also, went back to Rabbi Yochanan, the family, and said, Rabbi Yochanan said, very interesting, what can I do? My opponent, my equal, capable opponent, argued with me, and he carries as much authority as I do. Even if he said this field should be towards food, then he's adding. In other words, when you provide, you run out, you cannot touch that field, but continue giving her from that field. But if he says as a substitute for mezainis, no, should be for not towards the mezainis, but for the mezainis. No, this is where she's getting it from. Then cuts in the mezainis. He gave her a fixed amount. He gave her a fixed amount. What do you call it? So therefore, it's interesting. Before, other point out, before Rabbi Yochanan regretted helping out, and over here he didn't regret at all helping out, because over here it's up to her, because she could always walk out, collect her hoksuva, and leave. So therefore, the advice didn't really harm anybody. Because let's say you run out of mezainis, she said, "Okay, pay me out my ksuva and I'll leave." So therefore, she's never stuck. Not like another case where if he gave advice that they'll stop giving her put a cap on how much they pay her medicine bills, and she has to take over, and she'll eventually run out. And there's nowhere where she can get more money from. Hadna Lok Naira. We'll stop over here and.